When your heart's desire is to find a love that's lasting and real, then listen to that. This is what you are meant to have. And if you grew up with trauma, what might be blocking you from what you want is wobbly boundaries, unhealed trauma, and a big cluttered pile of half relationships all over your life. You can't be open to real love when your emotions are like a cluttered house. No one gets in the door. And even if they did, you might not recognize them. My letter today is from a woman I'll call Maryanne, and she writes, "Dear Anna, I have CPTSD and a very disorganized attachment style." All right, I've got my fairy pencil. I'm going to go through and circle things I want to come back to on a second reading. All right, Maryanne says, "I struggle with a pattern of feeling very vulnerable and afraid when I'm alone and yearning for partnership. But when I'm in a relationship, my brain gets very afraid and I just want out. It's painful. Is it possible to heal from this madness of wanting a relationship but also being afraid of them? And also from an inability that I have to discern what is acceptable and what is not acceptable in a relationship? And if so, is it better to do that healing from within a relationship or on my own?" I'm sure you'll say, yes, you can heal. Yes, you're right. I will say that. But I have been trying to heal this for a long time, yet I still churn through relationships due to this pattern. I think I'm a stubborn case. Can you help me? I certainly will try. All right. Maryanne says, "I'm 45 years old. I was married for 8 years and I've been divorced for 7 years. I have 2 kids, 15 and 11. I parent 65% of the time and I work full time. I'm deeply saddened by the fact that I have not been able to model a healthy, stable relationship for my kids. I've been in various forms of therapy for about 20 years and I just can't seem to heal this pattern. When I'm single, I feel like I'd be willing to tolerate almost anything in order to relieve the vulnerability of doing life without anyone who has my back. In addition to not having a partner, I lack any family to lean on. And I get anxiety, lose sleep, and my mind runs through all sorts of scenarios where I'd be screwed if X, Y, or Z happened, and I don't have anyone. But when I'm in a relationship, alarm bells go off that tell me I need to get out. I get flooded with feelings that it isn't safe or that I won't be happy, or I start to just not like the person, or I think about other people. And I know that I'll feel terrible on my own. But basically, my brain comes up with anything to convince me that I need to leave. I've had plenty of opportunities with men, and almost always I'm the one that breaks up with them. When I'm in a relationship, I truly can't distinguish what's safe and acceptable from what's not, or what's worth working through versus leaving over. I tend to blame myself for most failures, because even if the other person has screwed up, I know that I would have found a way to be unhappy, and it would have eventually failed anyway. Currently, I've been dating a man for 5 months. He's stable, he's a good dad to his kids, and we have common interests. He's a good communicator, engaged in self-growth, and wants a committed relationship. We don't laugh very much when we're together, and I wanted to laugh in a relationship. When we met, he wanted to move much faster than me. I said I needed things to move slowly, both emotionally and physically. He said he understood, but then he pushed sex on me early and firmly, and I ended up giving in. He pushed for introducing our kids well before I was ready. I didn't want to, but ultimately I went along with that too. After several upsetting experiences with these themes, my guard went up and I've been keeping him at arm's length. He's trying to learn and adapt, but I find that it is very difficult to let my guard back down. He's being more patient, but he still pushes to get his way. For example, he assumes he's spending spring break with my kids and I haven't even asked him to. He just took the time off of work and is planning on joining us, but I know that I can tend to hold people away, so I need to be sensitive and aware of my own tendencies. I want someone who wants to learn and grow together, but I find I want to leave, even though I feel like I'll regret it, and I'll be yearning and lonely if I do, and I feel like a failure because I have lost another relationship when I want to model stability for my kids. In my prior relationship, I dated a man for 1.5 years, and I loved him because he never scared me. I was attracted to him, and he made me laugh. He respected my boundaries, but the relationship was progressing so slowly that it didn't seem like it would ever become a real partnership. In all that time, we never spent a weekend together, and he never came to a single one of my kids' events. And there were other concerns too around communication, questionable drinking, and a 10-year age gap that resulted from him misrepresenting his age online. But he was steady and calming to me, and I genuinely liked him as a person. However, after long enough, I felt like I had to accept what it was instead of continuing to hope for it to become what I wanted to be, and I ended it. I also have a dear friend who wants to be together in a committed partnership. He wants to get married, which is my ideal. He is close to me and my kids, and we all really have fun and care about one another. He even coaches my son's little league. But I'm afraid of a relationship with him because there have been times in the past when he displayed some fairly intense outbursts of anger and negativity, and this is really dysregulating and scary for me. He said it was due to a substance that he was using for pain management and that he realized that was a problem and he quit and says he will never do it again. And that could be, but my brain doesn't believe that issues like that ever really go away. I grew up in a home with alcoholism, rage, and abuse, and it never got any better until the addict died. I struggle with indecision in many areas of my life, but this is the area of my life where it is most problematic and most painful. I don't want to live in this space of indecisiveness and inability to relax and commit. I want to be settled into a safe relationship. I want to be married, happy, and healthy. I talked to my therapist and to my friend who is also a therapist about this, but I don't think they fully understand. I'm not sure that people who don't have CPTSD really understand what it's like. They both think I just haven't found the right person, but I don't think that's it. I believe the problem is me and my brain's very disorganized attachment that I have tried and tried, but failed to heal. What can I do to end this cycle and heal, Anna? Okay. All right, Maryanne. I'll give you my best shot here. I do see some opportunities to change what you're doing that could be helpful. So let's just go through your letter and things I circled. So you recognize yourself as having a disorganized attachment style. And I just was wondering, like, you have a therapist, do they agree with that? Because, it just sounds like they're sort of saying, no, you're just, you haven't met the right person. And so that wouldn't be disorganized attachment. Disorganized attachment will show up again and again. And it can be healed, but it's like the one that you really, really have to work on. And I would just say, if that's what you think you have, I hope you'll be with a therapist who does get it and who has a lot of deep knowledge about attachment styles and has really practical help for how to deal with these impulses to rush in and then try to get out. So I heard a lot of stuff about timing and boundaries that wasn't really being accounted for here. And those are where the opportunities are here. So you're 45, you've been divorced for 7 years, your kids are 15, 11, and you parent 65% of the time and work full time. So that's a load, that's a lot. But here's the good thing, 35% of the time your kids are with their dad and you have time to date, not in front of them. So whatever happens in your dating life is not happening in front of them. And I'm going to tell you more about why I want you to just draw a hard line on that these relationships, this guy you've been dating for 5 months going on spring break, there's another way, my friend. And that's going to affect the kids. This relationship doesn't sound like it's going to last. It doesn't sound like you have boundaries. And everything that you want to show your kids right now, what you don't want to show them, you can handle like off on the side without exposing them to it. So I'm excited about this opportunity for you that you may not. It's just like our cultural values don't always tell us this. What you're doing is very normal culturally. I have this like other system I'll tell you about. Yeah, and you not only don't you have a partner, but you don't have a family. And I understand. I've been in that situation. Divorced mom, no family to help, went through some hard times with hospitalizations and all this, surgery I had. And it was just so much. It was such a hard time. And every once in a while, I'll talk about it. And even talking about it will cause me to spend the rest of the day kind of exhausted and sad. It was a lot. It was a lot. And of course you want that. Of course you need a support system. So first of all, the support, it is true that a husband is a great support system and that's what they're meant for. And so that's something that needs to be very high on your priority list of what you're looking for in dating. But first and foremost are friends. You need friends. And you didn't mention, well, you have a friend who's also a therapist, but a friend system that makes it so even if you don't have a relationship, even if, I know it's not what you want, but what if you never have one again? You want friends with whom your life is sweet. And there's always people to celebrate life's milestones with and get help from and to help them for life's hardships. And the friends are so important. And I just think, you know, it's natural and common to get very, very focused on the romantic partner, but never forget the friends. The friends will, and having good friends is what makes the romantic relationship successful. It brings oxygen into the room. It's not just like this little enmeshed, enclosed little space where everything depends on this one person being what you need. So yeah, you've been in therapy in one form or another for 20 years. So it just feels like your attachment style may not be getting the help it needs. It needs direct hands-on help. You get into a relationship and then alarm bells go off and you just need to get out. Well, what I heard is that you were getting into relationships with kind of wobbly boundaries and not very clear standards for yourself about what was acceptable and real difficulty expressing yourself when things were going too fast. So it's always you who ends it. Now you've been dating a man for 5 months. So here's what I want to tell you. 5 months. Can I just suggest like a red line for you? No guy meets your kids. They don't meet your kids or get involved with your kids or come to kid events or go on spring break or anything like that for a year. A year is the minimum time you need to find out if you're compatible with somebody. So if you're bringing people in who are just sort of like, you know, we'll see, that's dating. But that's not what you want in your kid's life. So it's a little bit of a sacrifice that you can't just bring somebody you're dating along on everything. It's a nice way to spend time together. But I don't think it's a good idea. The kids then witness these guys coming and going, and that's what gives the instability. If you don't bring the men into your life until you're sure about them, it's never going to happen again. If you're sure, you know, if the sureness can be sustained. And I hear you on this. But this guy, I'm just hearing all these things you don't like about him. I did hear what you liked. He's a communicator, engaged in self-growth, wants a committed relationship. You don't laugh. Yeah, that would be big for me too. He moves too fast and he's pressured you consistently to knock down your boundaries about sex and being around the kids and now the spring break thing. But what's missing in your story here is, so what'd you do? When he pressured you about sex, how did you say no? And I get, you know, I just totally understand that it can be difficult to stand up to somebody who's pressuring you. Maybe it's a disorganized attachment style, but perhaps that would not be such a big problem if your boundaries were just strong and clear. You seem to have no trouble attracting people. So that's lovely. That's lovely. There's always, you know, people with good qualities who are interested to be with you. So you get to practice this now. You get to practice having boundaries. If you can decide in advance what your boundary is about when you want to have sex in a relationship, just categorically, you know, is it 3 months, 6 months, a year, engagement? These are not uncommon boundaries for people who grow up with trauma, who struggle with attachment. When you can take your time on this, you can avoid fully attaching to them, where you sort of, everything in your psychology about your attachment just starts, you know, gets into the relationship now, where you have a little bit more autonomy if you haven't formed that level of attachment before. You can wait. You really can wait. And the lovely thing is, if you can avoid all these sort of things that fall apart and relationships that make you unhappy, you can meet the right person and have the best sex of your life. It could be wonderful and you could be married and have all of this, but not when you keep having boundaryless relationships with people whose flaws and you end up crap fitting to. I think pressuring people for sex is not cool. Perhaps if he told his side of the story, it really wasn't that strong of pressure. He was expressing a preference. I don't know, but I know how you feel, and I know that you wish you had set a boundary, and nobody can set that boundary for you except you. So that's your job, and I know your therapist can help you learn to do that. And if that therapist can't help you to do that, I think you might want another therapist. Because that's not rocket. It's rocket science to us, but from a therapist's point of view, it's a known system, and there's very good literature on how to do that. You know, I would really encourage you to search boundaries books, you know, on Amazon or something. There's very good books out there from different perspectives with people with kind of different energies and styles towards it. No one can really be close to somebody without boundaries. When you have to worry all the time that you're just going to get like consumed and sucked in and overwhelmed in a relationship, you can't really open your heart, can you? So somebody's got to mind the door there. That you got to kind of be your own guard at the door, and just, you date to get to know somebody. You get to know somebody and decide, do you want to be intimate with them? It's culturally normal to just, have no barriers on this at all. And they're just like in your life and you're having sex. And then you're trying to figure out retroactively if it was somebody you wanted that kind of a connection with. And it takes a lot out of you if it's like a lot of relationships, a lot of breakups. And I just wouldn't recommend that. So you have a strong lever here that you can change how all of this goes. And it's not too late to change this relationship if you choose. This thing about spring break, by the time I guess I got this and read this, it's probably too late, but I just want to tell you, say no. Say, I'm so sorry you took the time off of work. This is awkward, but no, I really did not want you to come on this. And I'm really sorry, didn't want to hurt your feelings, but no, that's not appropriate. Sorry. And if he doesn't like it, he's not the one for you. And I think that's a very strong thing. This, if you're comfortable with somebody who's kind of, let's see. We could put a positive spin on his behavior and say he's like a golden retriever. He's just like really eager and he doesn't know. And, I've been that person too. And perhaps it's innocent. He didn't write the letter. So I just want to tell everybody, like, if you're going to criticize what I say about him, I don't know him. I don't know how he feels about this. A little bit I will speculate, but I try not to, and just say, you don't like it. So you need a boundary to be communicated with him. And it's only fair to tell him it's not what you want. If that's a deal breaker for him, let it end. I know it sounds scary. And that's why it's so important for you to have friends. I know you have at least one. It's going to be so good for your kids, because the thing about kids is they're very, we all have a nervous system. We all feel each other, but kids, especially young kids, they are so sensitive to what's going on the nervous system, climate around them. They can feel when somebody's stressed. They can feel when there's tension between their mom and somebody else. They can feel when their mom is unhappy. And so whether you're saying all the right things or not, they are feeling that this is causing you distress. And I think what you're trying to show them is peace, strength, confidence, boundaries, all the good things that you want them to have. And so that's something nice about kids, is they are a prompt to get us to kind of step up and be an even better version of ourselves than we would be for our own sake, with all of our kind of wounding and thinking, well, maybe I should just put up with things because I can't do better. Like, yeah, but for your kids, right? For your kids, you got to do better. And you being single is fine for the kids. It's fine, and probably very peaceful. I know it's lonely. I know, but you have a third of your time when you can be doing things like going to a 12-step program, perhaps. That can be a nice way to have a place to go and make friends and talk about what's really going on, or a class or a hobby or something that involves other people. And then when you date, I encourage you, just date when the kids are not with you. Don't bring them along for that. So my line with my now husband was a year, and that worked out nicely. And when the kids did meet him, they had heard about him, they met him, and by then my husband and I knew that we were seriously dating and that we were considering marriage. It ended up being like a ridiculously long time till we were married, but we were dedicated to going slow. And so, it was a total of 5 years between when I met him and when we got married. And during that time, there were periods when one or the other of us was like, I don't know if this is going to work out. I just don't know. It was not like a straight shot to the moon. It was a winding road of figuring things out. And it was hard on the kids when they could sense that I was bent out of shape about it, worried about it or dissatisfied or scared. Some of that can't be helped. But as much as we can, we want to preserve our strong self for the kids. And it's just an inherently tough thing to be, it's very, kids who are raised with two parents who stay together have this terrific advantage in so many ways in life. But I know as well as anybody, we just can't put that together all the time how we'd like to. And they can still have a great life, and we can still be good parents to them if we do our best. But I regret very much bringing dating people in. There was people I brought in before my now husband, and it regret it very much. It was weird. It was very uncomfortable for my kids. They had feelings about it. And yeah, if I could take it back, I just wouldn't have done that. So you said your prior relationship was with a guy who scared you. You were attracted to him. He had so many great qualities. But there was this problems with communication, questionable drinking, and a 10-year age gap. All right, and he misrepresented his age online. I know that's kind of like, it's not uncommon that people do that. I would consider it a red flag, but probably not the worst red flag. It's, as long as it came out very quickly that's how old he was. But you're saying it's not something you would have accepted about him because it came, it resulted from him misrepresenting, like you wouldn't have gone on a date with him in the first place. So it sounds like more the issue is, everybody gets to choose the age category that's appropriate to them. So it's good not to lead people on if you find that they're like outside the window of what you like and what you could have a relationship with. We want to be kind to them by not leading them on with that. The questionable drinking, yeah, that's a question that needs to be answered for sure, to consider such a person. You said, it's funny because the relationship you're in now, it's going so too fast for you. This one you said was going so slow, and yet you were only together a year and a half. So I don't think a year and a half is crazy for things going slow. You haven't been specific about what this is, but you thought it would never become a real partnership. So I'm guessing you said you loved him and you were attracted to him and he respected your boundaries and made you laugh. Okay, so many good pluses there, but it was just going so slowly. So I don't know if you had insight about that, but I think that a relationship going very slowly is something that can and should be talked about. Because I know it could mean that somebody's not into you, or it could mean they simply can't bond. But it is okay for a divorced mom to date slowly. It's like healthy and good. When you bring somebody into your life for real, like you need to know. And a year and a half, you're beginning to know. I would say minimum 2 years. And nobody wants to hear that when they're lonely and they want to have a great relationship. But, it's in everybody's best interest to conserve this tremendous power to love another person that you have inside for a person who can receive it and who is worthy of it. And that's where life gets happy as fast as possible, instead of this mucking around in things that are difficult and stressful and draining. So then there was this dear friend who had the anger lash out. And that guy, everybody has these fine qualities. And I'm happy that people with fine qualities are drawn to you. That's a nice thing. But you were worried about the anger, and he said it was just something he was using for pain. And yeah, I hear the red flag in that. I hear that it might not be the most serious thing. Maybe there's an explanation. Couples counseling can be helpful if you're thinking about really being serious with somebody and getting to the bottom of those issues and finding out, is it really a thing, the anger or the drinking or... So you're saying you struggle with indecision, and yeah, and this is why it's such a problem. Your friends think it's just not the right person, and you think you're turning away good people. It's literally impossible for me on the outside to tell you whether they were good matches for you. If you trusting your gut think that any of these were very good people and you blew it, then you get to work on that. You get to work on that. But you can also work on it with the benefit of boundaries so that they're not too tightly in your life. They're not going on vacation with you. They're not, hanging out with the kids within a short amount of time. And you can focus on what you really want. You said that you made it sound like you did know some criteria. So I don't know if you've taken my dating course, but in my dating course, the whole thing starts with you get extremely clear about what do you want in a relationship. What is your ideal person and what is your ideal life? And it's actually very hard for most people who I work with to help them overcome these dating problems, to name that, what they actually want. Like everybody feels like they have to sacrifice something. And I live in the real world. Nobody gets a perfect deal. No relationship is perfect. No partner is perfect. And no matter how many things you name about what you want, it's very unlikely you'll get them all. But the benefit that you get is you get very clear about what you need and where you're going to have to advocate for yourself and set the boundaries and say, if this happens, I'm not going to be in this relationship. And if this happens, we're going to have to talk it through and I'll have to think about it. And I'm willing to step back from the relationship to take time to get clarity about it. So these are my two important things to you is I might be misnumbering this. I'll just tell you, it's a number of things. So one is boundaries. Research boundaries and see if your therapist can talk to you more explicitly about how to do that. Do an exercise to get clear about what you want. If it's 200 criteria, that's okay. And you can rank them in the absolute must-haves or it must not be, like you don't want somebody who has bursts of anger. If you're 100% clear that you can't deal with that, then somebody who has that you don't date. If you don't want somebody who pressures you to have sex, then that's just like a red line. So when you know that's your red line, maybe you can advocate better for yourself. Is it possible that you're giving ambivalence about it that are confusing him? And I don't want to get into justifying somebody who's pushy sexually when a woman is saying no. Like it's very hard to hear from your story, like what the nuances of this story are. So I'm not really justifying anybody. There needs to be crystal clear communication about when there's a boundary there. And, because sometimes in a playful way, people can kind of play cat and mouse. And so nobody can think that this is a cat and mouse game when it's a hard no for you. It's up to you to give the no. And then if they cross your boundary, then you have your answer. You have your answer. It doesn't sound like anybody you've been with is like putting you in danger. I'm not hearing that. And so I'm happy for that, for you and for your kids. So good job on that. And so boundaries, friends, having fun. So there's not so much pressure to have to stay with a man you're not happy with. And then a process for getting clear with tools about what is it that you really want, and then from day to day to day, how are you doing? What I do is I call it the daily practice, and it's a specific writing technique to get the anxious thoughts out, like fear I'll never get a man, fear time is passing me by, and fear I ruin everything, and fear it's always me, and fear I shouldn't have been so mean, but also resentment. I'm resentful at the guy because fear he said he's coming on the spring break, and fear I didn't invite him, and fear now I don't know how to tell him. So we get all this stuff on paper because it gets very jumbled up in here. So when you have a way to name it and get it on paper and release it, or if you're spiritual, ask for it to be removed, space appears, choices are there right in front of you. And it just becomes a lot clearer, not only what your options are, but the strength of your own agency, your power to decide how you want to proceed. And then you have the power to express yourself, which I know is scary. It's scary to express ourselves, especially when what we're going to say is going to hurt people or make them angry. With less fear about us expressing ourselves, we get to practice it better, and with more practice, we become more graceful. And so it's going much better, and then we can speed up that process of getting all those hardships and terrible relationships behind us and being in the fresh air of new possibilities and deciding, what do I want? How shall I proceed? I will now express myself, and then to find out, let the chips fall where they may, does the person in front of you feel good about who you are and what you require? And can you come together naturally and let that commitment and safety with each other form naturally? All right? I hope that helps with you today. If anybody here feels like early trauma in your life affected your dating life, that you're making decisions now that are self-sabotaging or guided by some mysterious force that you don't know why you're doing it, yeah, it could be the trauma. I have a list of a bunch of signs that childhood trauma may be affecting your romantic relationships today. And you can have a copy of that for free. All you have to do is click right over there, and I will see you very soon.